Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Graziano, and I'm the founder of Keen Alignment. Keen Alignment works with organizations to design, shape, and advance high-performance corporate cultures. And please welcome my co-facilitator today, Dr. Michael Soon Lee. And Michael, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Maji. I have been a diversity and inclusion consultant for probably 25 years, and I've written a number of books on the topic. I have a brand new book coming out called Men in the Minefield, which is about how men can survive in the new world of Me Too.
Awesome, thank you. And today we're going to be working together to walk you through a high level, we only have an hour, a high level conversation about developing a high performing culture and a new methodology, a similar methodology to what they use in the agile software world. So we'll get into that in a few minutes. So let's talk first about the myths about employee engagement, the myths about unwanted turnover, and the myths about culture. And first and foremost, one of the myths about employee engagement is that people most often leave for more pay. Not true. Gallup survey, McKinsey, and even the Bureau of Labor Statistics has data on this, and it is one of the least impactful reasons people leave unless they are grossly underpaid already. Another myth is that incentive programs produce long-term profits, improve productivity and morale. Incentive programs often only work for a few, so they are more of an exclusive program than an inclusive program, which is a cornerstone of what's needed for engagement. Another myth is people don't want more responsibility. Actually, one of the top drivers of engagement is that people want to feel self-actualized in their work, and they want to feel like they are being empowered to take on more. Corporate loyalty is dead is a myth. Corporate loyalty must be earned is the other side of that. Then
actually, Maji,
yep.
Did you know that employees today actually stay longer with a company than they did 25 years ago? And that's something that we've got to remember and get over, that particular myth. And just jumping back to myth number one, that people leave for more pay, you mentioned the stats. 27% of people today leave for more meaningful work. 17% want increased responsibility, as you mentioned in myth number three, and only 16% actually want increased pay. So that's very important to remember. Go ahead with number five.
Great. That it's expensive to improve employee satisfaction. You know, for some people and for most people, a thank you, an authentic connection with their boss and with their team is what provides employee satisfaction. And that may take a little bit of time, but it takes a lot more time to repair a broken relationship than to create a good one. And that employee satisfaction is fluff. Actually, employee satisfaction is directly linked to employee productivity. So it's not fluff. Anything, Michael, for you on 5 or 6?
Yeah, on 5, you know, as you mentioned, it doesn't really take money. It just takes a little bit of thinking, such as showing respect for employees and, just treating them well and just making sure that they have respect and make sure that they get the type of assignments and the projects they want to work on. But you've got to ask them. You've got to be willing to ask. And number 6, employee satisfaction is fluff. I mean, keeping good employees really begins and ends with trust, building trust, maintaining trust, because leaders who don't trust their employees often micromanage them, and we all hate to be micromanaged. I know we've all been there, and we all hate it. And it's important that high-performing employees, they don't typically need to be micromanaged. And it's important to recognize that how they feel is how they treat your employees. And I think number 7, go ahead.
And how they feel about their experience in the workplace is how they treat the end user, which is the customer. So it's like
exactly.
a pipe, a conduit of attitude, inside goes outside, etc.
So it is contagious.
Another myth is that the supervisors are the problem. Let's blame the supervisors. They're not doing a good job. Supervisors are only a mirror reflection of the people they report to. We all learn. It's like the parents of the company are the executive team, and then the older siblings are the upper level management, and then come the supervisors, mid-level management, which is the hardest role in the company, and then the team members. Mm-hmm. Supervisors may be part of the problem, but they are not the only problem. And then this last myth is that my company, my industry, my people are different. I've worked with, and Michael has too, thousands of companies and tens and thousands of people. And fundamentally, people are people, and they want the same thing. And it is the connectivity. It is the feeling of value. It is the feeling of trust, the feeling of respect that breeds a culture that people want to work at.
It is contagious, Maji. And just going back to number 7, better managers equal more engaged employees. And we've got to give managers opportunities to grow their own leadership styles. So supervisors are definitely not the problem. So Maji, why don't we talk about design thinking? You can see here what the definition of design thinking is. Do you want to actually read it for folks?
Sure. A nonlinear, which means it is not step 1, step 2, step 3. It's an iterative process which seeks to understand the user, the end user. It challenges predisposed assumptions, limiting beliefs, current beliefs that you don't think are limiting, and it redefines the problems and creates innovative, outside-in solutions that we can try and test and try and test and try and test before we implement it company-wide. So what does this mean for a talent strategy? When keen alignment, when Michael and I go into an organization and we work with them on creating a culture that works for everyone, a best place to work culture, it is much more of a brainstorming session. It begins with, what is our user experience? So in the software world, let's say they're developing a phone. They say, what does the user of this phone need to be able to do? We need to be able to set a timer. The user needs to be able to email people in a moment. Well, what does our employee, what do our team members need? What do they want? What would have our team members be delivering extraordinary experience to our customers? The next thing we look at is, well, what's in the way? What are our constraints? What are the beliefs that we have that are old thinking that need to be put aside? And then what is it that we want to construct that creates an extraordinary user experience so that people really get to be who they want to be? They get to belong, be accepted. All people long to be and to be accepted in a community. And work is that community for the majority of our population today. And then the other thing I want to say about this is, when we're working on culture or bringing in a new program for employee engagement, or bringing in a diversity or an inclusion program, or even a sexual harassment or a Me Too program, we need to start small and prototype it, and make sure it gains traction before we bring it to the entire organization. So Michael, anything there for you?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, Maji, that design thinking is really more of a process for creative problem solving, as you mentioned, but it has people at its core, which is different than normal problem solving. It encourages organizations to, I think, focus on the people they're creating it for, and it leads to better products, services, and certainly internal processes. And I want to emphasize that when people leave a company, it hurts performance, and it's expensive. It costs 6 to 9 months of your former employee's salary just to identify and onboard their replacement. So that's why employee engagement is so very important.
And Michael, from a financial perspective, depending on how high level the person is, Harvard Business Review, and you've got Saratoga Institute and Blakely, 3 times the salary to replace an individual contributor, 7 times the salary to replace and onboard an executive. And
right.
have a senior leader who is degrading culture or eroding the core values, it will impact a minimum of 10 salaries per leader. And then, it's the cascading effect. So a typical question when it comes to culture or engagement is, what is it? And why is it important?
Right.
Now, again, if it's HR having this conversation in a silo with HR, it will never move beyond the HR department. This is one of the challenges that HR is experiencing today. I recently met with the CEO of Underwriters Laboratories, and he learned what I didn't, and he said, I want to tell you that for me, culture was and is my most important endeavor as the CEO of a 12,000 person company, privately held. The first thing he did is he went to the HR department and he said, what's the learning and development budget? And they said, we don't have one. He said, we do now, and it will be a separate department. And for him, culture and learning is a separate department than HR. And I really want people to hear this. Frankly, at a 12,000 person company, that's fine. But if you have a 100 person company, a 600 person company, it must be the same group. And HR is used to being the rule enforcer, this is what has to be done, and I'm saying it's so, and you need to follow it. With engagement, with learning development, with culture, you must begin with the end in mind. What's that experience you want those people to have, and bring it in? So the true question to ask your leaders is, what is employee engagement, and why do we need it? And what's the result of having it?
Right. So let me explain for our audience a little more. What is an engaged employee? We talk about it all the time, but it is someone who is fully absorbed and enthusiastic about their work. They take positive actions to further the company's reputation and its interests. And employee engagement strategies have been proven to reduce staff turnover, improve productivity and efficiency, as you mentioned, Maji, retain customers at a higher rate, and make more profits, which is what we all want. But most importantly, engaged employees are happier, both at work and in their own personal lives. So why don't we talk about the talent storm that's leading up to this, Maji?
Yeah, so when I and Michael, we're pretty much the same age. When we started in the workforce, employee engagement was not a thing. Nobody talked about it.
No.
We were lucky to have jobs. We were grateful to have jobs, and we put up with whatever shenanigans was going on. I mean, my first job after 3 years, I was the top producer, and I said, I'm bored, and I want to do more. And the boss said, here's my boss's response. Would you like me to parade circus animals in front of you?
Yeah, what are you talking about? Why is that important?
She thought, man, you should be grateful just to be here. And so here's what's
happening.
We have 5 different demographics right now impacting the workforce. We have Walter World War II, which most people say, well, Walter's not working anymore, but he certainly is. And he's on many boards. Mostly they're not she's in the World War II generation. It's mostly men. And they've either created the infrastructure or they're still on boards wanting to hold on to that old infrastructure. And then on the youngest end, we've got Zach, Gen Z, and he's looking at everybody going, man, you guys are really messed up. And then we've got the different generations in between, the boomers, the Gen Xers, and the millennials. But more than the age, here's what's important is the psychographics, the psychology of these different generations. And there's a lot of buzz on LinkedIn about, well, millennials aren't the only ones that want meaning and purpose, and millennials aren't the only ones that want feedback. Millennials are just the loudest, and they're the largest number of people entering the workforce. So the focus is on them, not because they're younger, not because they're that different. It's because we have to learn how to integrate them into the workforce. So Michael, anything you want to say about the psychographics and the psychology of the humans doing the work today?
Well, I think it's important, Maji, just to be aware of it, because the world has changed. It's no more just keep your nose to the grindstone. It's, I want to have a life outside of work. You and I, we lived to work, and everybody else now kind of just gets along and they want to live outside of work, and they just want to be able to make a living there.
Yeah,
so why don't we talk about go ahead.
I want to say people now want integration, work-life integration, because it isn't, Michael and I talk on weekends, we talk on evenings, we talk at 7 o'clock in the morning. That is not different than anyone else. People are hyper connected. So if I'm going to be connected to my workplace, let's say 24/7 if needed, I also need to know that my workplace is connected to me and my needs. So disengagement over the last decade has been averaging 70% of the average American worker is disengaged or actively disengaged. This includes managers and executives. And then there's this, I would say in the last recession, what people are calling the Great Recession, for about a decade surrounding that, training budgets were evaporated. Companies were not focused on how do we train up the next generation, because they were nose to the grindstones in survival mode. And it's the first thing to be cut in a recession. So now people are talking, oh, we're headed for a recession. The stock market, went down yesterday. We cannot add into this erosion of training, the dearth of leadership. We're promoting people at a mass of velocity into roles, and only 12% of the people in leadership roles feel they're qualified to do the job. And that means we cannot erode these training budgets. We need to teach people how to engage themselves. We need to teach managers how to create engagement, and we need to teach people to lead. Now, even if we face a recession, we are still in an economy that is growing because of technology and is growing because of the need to be competitive. And then another issue facing the perfect talent storm is Me Too. And Michael, I want you to talk a little bit about the Me Too and then the AI and the IoT and how all of this is melding together in this cauldron of challenges around keeping people engaged and inspired at work.
Yeah, I just want to mention, Maji, that going back to disengagement, one disengaged employee, this is an average disengaged employee, not necessarily top management, but one disengaged employee costs an average of $16,000 a year. And again, that's an average employee. And with our economy these days, even though things are going well, as everybody knows, it's harder now to find qualified employees and hire them away from the competition who's trying to hire your employees away from you. So that's important. But with the new world of Me Too, this is a fact of life in the workplace. There's an ever increasing threat of sexual harassment lawsuits because people are more willing to speak up than ever before. According to the Equal Opportunity Commission, probably 80% of all sexual harassment incidents in the workplace are never reported. And now men are afraid to even work with women in the workplace. Maji, I heard one manager say that he's only going to employ ugly women so that there's no chance of harassment. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but I see men avoiding women, not hiring women. Do you see a problem here with a potential lawsuit about harassment? So this is a huge issue that we've got to be willing to address to address. And with AI, I mean, as you mentioned, we are constantly connected today. And so there's burnout that's involved. There's work-life balance that we've got to deal with. Anything else about connectedness that you're thinking about when it comes to this?
Yeah, it is forecasted that a third of all jobs in the United States will disappear in the next decade due to artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. And here's what I want to say about that. When you really dig in and do the research, the kind of jobs that will be replaced are left hemisphere, very specific, automated, repetitive tasks that some people have spent their life getting good at. And so if we're really going to lose a third of the jobs that are non-people oriented, that are repetitive, we need to invest in teaching people the skills around working with people. Daniel Pink wrote a book, To Sell is Human. That book is really not about sales. The book is about relating to people and influencing people. And he is forecasting that 90% of all jobs in America in the next 20 years will be people-related jobs. And we all need to get better at connectivity to other human beings, collaboration, resiliency, the ability to take a licking and keep on ticking, change management, and ability to understand change, because our world is moving at the speed of a hurricane.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people trying to teach coding out there, and I think that's one of the jobs that's going away real soon. So let's talk about how do we empower people by training them and make learning a part of your culture. As you mentioned, it shouldn't just be a separate little department. Obviously, it should have its own budget, but it's got to be inculcated throughout the organization 24/7. People have got to be learning new skills and to be able to relate to people. We also have boomers and traditionalists who are leaving the workplace, and guess what? They are leaving with tremendous accumulated knowledge that's not getting passed on to the rest of the company, and you're losing a tremendous resource when it comes to that. Yeah. And when it comes to teaching, go ahead, Maji.
So I just want to say what I've seen is that these specifically traditionalists and early generation boomers, they actually do not feel valuable in many, many cases.
Right. And so they just retire.
And they have experienced being excluded from meetings, being marginalized. And so when I come in and say, hey, it's from aging to saging, your job is to be a sage and mentor and shepherd, they light up, they puff up with pride. But how come an outside person needs to say that? We can encourage and inspire these folks to transfer their knowledge. And so I just want to say that I'm not going to go read all 10 things, but the organizations that embrace training and that take their core values and teach people how to be those core values are the organizations that are retaining people. They're the organizations that have a much higher level of engagement and inspiration, and it needs to be part of the new world.
Yeah, and I just want to remind people that when it comes to, let's look at number 2, when it comes to basic skills, don't assume that people even know the basics. For example, millennials, Gen Z, they're on their phones all the time. They text to people they're sitting next to. They have no idea how to do public presentations competently and confidently. And so there's just one example of some basic skills that they have no idea how to do.
And on that note, there are people that are my age that don't know how to communicate when they are upset. There are people that withhold performance information because their whole life they've been taught that performance management is confrontational and they don't want to be confrontational. So they withhold real important information like, hey, Michael, when you fell asleep, now Michael would never do this, but I have had consultants, when you fell asleep in the back of the room, that didn't work for me. They just step over that. And so basic skills like communicating what's not working, basic skills like asking for help, basic skills like following up with someone after you train them to make sure they learned it. It's all people. Anything
And
else
it's about engagement, Maji, because if they don't feel safe to be able to speak up and say those things,
yes,
and that's sometimes a real problem for women, but everybody in the workplace has got to feel safe. And what we do, as you know, is we create a safe place for people to be able to speak up and therefore become engaged.
yes.
So let's talk about how we can reward people.
Yeah, so here's the interesting thing that we're finding about rewards, and I have nothing against O.C. Tanner or these people that sell the badges and the gifts. They're important, but not everybody responds to gifts and plaques and pins. Some people just want a sincere thank you. And if we understand, if we want to influence, if we want to win friends and influence people, right? We need to understand who those people are and what inspires them. And we need to lead, manage, coach, work with them in a way that serves them. Some people want money. Some people want time off for good behavior. Some people want training. So we really need to find out, if you want to sell Jill Smith what Jill Smith buys, we have to sell Jill Smith through Jill Smith's eyes. So
Exactly.
we have to see Jill Smith. And one of the things Zappos does that I love and they teach is creating this wall of fame. And AB and I, a current client of Keen, you walk into their main conference room and every soul that works in that company is on the wall. And every soul hired from that company is on the wall. So you're constantly surrounded by old school, new school, real school. It's very powerful. Michael, what about celebration? What do you know about celebration and recognition that would be important for inclusivity?
Well, I think it's important to celebrate milestones and achievements. And many times we go, we're so busy. Well, thanks, we met that deadline. Now on to the next one. And it's like, well, so what? Why did we kill ourselves? So it's important to do that. And as you mentioned, the only way to know what's important to your employees is to ask them. One company I worked with, they wanted a winner to be able to have dinner with the CEO. Another company just wanted to have the best parking spot closest to the office just for a month. And then everybody got to see them coming and going, and they got their kudos all the time, and it was a celebration for them. Another company wanted to have free lunch with the team, and it was a good team building exercise as well as a celebration. So again, it's really important just to simply ask your team, what does a reward actually mean to you? Stop assuming it's a trip to Hawaii necessarily, or it's a plaque. Maji, do you know how many plaques I have in boxes in my office?
Yeah.
Just sitting around or in storage? Forget it.
And I, as a younger person, I liked that recognition. But now I'm like, what? Who cares? So one thing I want to say about, Michael mentioned celebrating milestones. I work with a lot of organizations, and when I first get there, they're like, well, we have a party at the end of the year. Acknowledgement for people slides off like Teflon. Correction for people sticks like Velcro. There's a book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Anker, and he's a neuroscience trainer, he's a professor, and he speaks about we really need to acknowledge frequently for the progress so people keep going. And the other thing about rewards and consequences is there needs to be rewards and consequences for good performance. We also have to have consequences for not so good performance. And if you're gonna do it on one side, you have to do it on the other side so people learn. People behave in a way that we reward for. Sometimes we create these incentive programs that inspire the wrong behavior. So we have to be aware and really look at what we are rewarding.
I think it's important that we catch people doing good as well as catching people doing bad. And, one of the things we had mentioned was consider an employee stock ownership plan. So many companies can do that, and it really gets the employees invested and says you care.
So let's talk about the design thinking model and mind mapping, which is something that we would do if we were designing a product. Begin with the end in mind. So what we want is employee engagement. What are the top drivers of employee engagement today? Well, the Society of Human Resources Management and the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Gallup poll, these are the global drivers of engagement, with inclusion being a newer driver and diversity. And this has really come to fruition because of the Me Too problems. And so now people are interviewing, they're like, I'd like to know the diversity and inclusion policy. So once we know we want employee engagement, let's look at, based on the drivers of engagement, how is our organization doing with inspiring mission and vision throughout our days, throughout our processes? Do people know why we're here and the purpose of our business? So Michael, why don't you take a couple other ones?
Well, I think it's important to have the mission and vision certainly on your website, but you should certainly have diversity at the lower left. That's important. People are starting to look for your diversity as well as your inclusion policy on your website. And they want to know, what kind of on-the-job training can I get? Because today it's not just about compensation in terms of money. People want to get skills so that if they ever need to go to another company or go out on their own, that they've got the skills to be able to do that. And they want to know that they've got a great future ahead of them, as well as what we talked about before, self-actualization. They want to be excited about where they work. It's no longer good enough just to get a paycheck, go home and try to enjoy your weekend. They want to have excitement all day long. So think about ways that you can excite as well as surprise your employees in a good way every single day.
Yeah, and so when you talk about the on-the-job training, old thinking is we teach somebody to do their job. New thinking is we teach people how to thrive in life. We teach financial acumen. We teach well-being. We teach stress management. We find out from our employees, what is the future you're living into, and how can this job today build a bridge for you to get there? That's really design thinking. And also, one of the things that Keith Williams said to me when I was in my conversation with him is he said that some of his managers say, well, I don't want to train people, then they'll leave. And he said, so you want to not train them and stay? Who cares if they leave? If we're releasing talent into the community, we're making the world a better place. And when people feel cared for, supported, coached, mentored, they are more likely to return when they're at a different stage in their career. So we talked about it a little bit before, this work and life integration, this work-life navigation. There may not be balance. Some weeks we may be at work. Right now, the average person spends 50% of their waking hours on the way to work, on the way home, at work, thinking about work, answering emails off of work. It's about 50 hours a week. That doesn't include managers who are actually at work 50 hours a week or 60 hours a week, or executives who are working 75 hours a week. There's only so many waking hours. And so what we need to do is look at, how do we create this experience so people feel like their best interest is at mind? And Michael spoke at the very beginning, trust. Trust is where it all starts. If we've got executives making promises and then not keeping them, and they're not cleaning it up and saying, hey, I made a mistake. I told you we were going to do this. I didn't forecast right, or I said we'd never have a layoff, and now we have to have a layoff. We must come clean with people to restore trust, because we can't always keep all of our promises, but we need to acknowledge we made one that we didn't keep, or we need to not promise. And here's the other kind of friction area is, even if you don't say the word promise as a leader, people hear promise. And if anything you say you're going to do, you got to either do it, or you got to clean up early and often when you can't. Is there anything we haven't covered here?
No, I think that's important, Maji. And when you talk about training people, and sometimes they do leave with that great knowledge, but they do come back, and they make it easier to recruit other people because of the great training that they got.
Yes, yes. And they talk about it at lunch.
They do.
We have a one specific customer right now. We started with them 2 years ago, and we're at the tail end of a major. Before we started working with this company, they were headed for a walkout, a strike. They were done.
Wow.
Now, 2 years later, we're going into maintenance mode. People in the foundry, this is a 130-year-old company, they said it's never worked so fluidly. They've never felt so connected, respect each other. And it's all the training we gave them was not how to run a better foundry. They know how to make pipe. The training we gave was how to treat each other, how to communicate with each other, how to be resilient. It was all personal training of how to take my best me and connect with Michael's best Michael. So I want to talk about what it is to create a constructive culture, a culture that works for everyone. There's 4 main elements. It's humanistic, encouraging, affiliative. Those are the soft pieces, right? Everybody's connecting to each other. But then there's achievement. We produce what we say we're going to produce. And self-actualizing. Maslow, the highest level of human fulfillment is when you feel self-actualized. Well, people want to be self-actualized now, today. As soon as the basic needs are met, then they want self-actualization. It's not like when you're 70, you get self-actualization. Our millennials want to feel self-actualized now in everything they're doing. So what does this mean? Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about what a humanistic and encouraging culture, what happens in that kind of culture?
Well, in a humanistic culture, everybody feels included, not just the young people. That's all the way to the boomers and the traditionalists. They feel included. Women feel included. And the benefit of that is when people feel included, you've got their full participation, which means they contribute their ideas, their experiences, which also helps you to come up with really creative solutions to the very difficult challenges. In this increasingly global and competitive world, you need every employee's input, ideas, thoughts, experiences to be able to survive and thrive in this new world. And everybody needs to be, they need to be connected. And so if they're connected, then they're all sharing those ideas and they're moving together as a team instead of individual players. Yeah. And when it comes to compassion, that's just understanding what everybody's going through, not only at work, but sometimes outside of work as well, because what we do outside impacts what we do inside of work. If you had a bad day at home, trust me, people at work are going to know it. And so those are just some of the benefits of having a very humanistic and encouraging culture in your workplace. And Maji, that's what we do best, right?
Yep. So I want to talk a little bit about the collective intelligence. When you are not a humanistic, inclusive environment, you don't tap into the collective intelligence of the team. So you're hiring these people, you're spending money to have them there, and then you're not asking them what they think about things. And so we tamper down that intelligence that they bring to the table. So a lot of people, when they say encouraging, I don't want to, have to baby people. That's not what it's about. No. It's about understanding their state of mind. So we just did a workshop, and they brought 40 people from all over the world in to do mission, vision, and values. And they did mission and vision values 2 years ago, but it didn't stick. And it was only with the executive team. But what was amazing is as we took them through this experiential exercise, and I checked in and I said, there's 7 levels of individual, group, and organizational effectiveness, which we can't get into right now. But I said, what level are you at? Half of the company was in fear, hopelessness, and frustration. The other half of the group was in courage and engagement. And they never, ever before this exercise actually got that people could be in a low state of mind. And if they were in a low state of mind, they did not have access to their creativity and their innovation and their intelligence, because in a low state of mind, we get narrow focused on our pain and we disconnect from the collective. And that's why it's important to have compassion and connection for the people that you work with. So now we're going to talk a little bit about affiliation. To work in an environment where people are affiliating, integrating, and because this is Michael's sweet spot, I want him to take care of the affiliation as well.
Well, Maji, when you're talking about affiliative, you're talking about those 3 components: diversity, collaborative, sharing knowledge. When it comes to diversity, we're talking about not just cultural diversity, but we're talking about age, gender, and so much more, just diverse ways of doing business and thinking.
And roles,
yes.
the roles in a company, and the different personality types. There's the people who are very decisive, and then there's the people who are methodical. If you have all people in making a decision who are all very decisive, they're all going to argue. Their way. And if you have all people who are very methodical, the decision will never be made.
No. Or it'll be made the wrong way. You want to have different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things. But I think, Maji, the big challenge is a lot of people are afraid to have different ideas because there can be a little bit of conflict. But one of the things that we deal with is dealing with conflict in a positive way, so it brings out different ideas. And conflict can actually be good as long as you know how to deal with it. When it comes to collaboration, we all need to work together, because nobody, I don't care who it is the smartest person in the room. But if you've got a big enough group of people, I guarantee you the solution is there somewhere if you know how to tease it out. And if you're willing to suffer through the challenges and the uncomfortableness of a little bit of pushback, a little bit of, just people being uncomfortable, that can lead to some really creative problem solving. And of course, you've got to share knowledge. And if you share knowledge, it can do nothing but make your company better, faster, more agile, and more competitive.
So one thing I want to say about the affiliation is constructive conflict, which is what Michael's talking about, is actually required for innovation. And when people are in frustration, they know something's gotta give, something's gotta change. In the absence of frustration, change doesn't happen. But when they move into courage and they start to say what they need to say, that's where constructive conflict starts to happen, where the friction starts to happen. And then people move into engagement. So in the 40-person company that we worked with last Friday, there was a guy from England, and he said, I don't see how this is going to make a difference. And he was kind of the naysayer, and he was kind of throwing little time bombs in. That guy spurred so much creative conflict that it was extremely powerful to have him. And when he got on board, he carried so many people with him. If I would shut down his negativity, if I would have said, oh, no, he's not being kind, or he's not being sweet, or he's causing trouble, if I were to resist that as a facilitator, the message I would send is that I don't want people who are not a yes. We do want the no's. We need the no's. It's very important. So achievement is another component of a constructive culture. We need goals. We need challenges. We need foci. We need people to focus on the end game. And the best way to do that is to keep it simple. Don't have people focusing on the top 29 things they need to do. 6 is a good number. Beyond 6, 7 and more is almost too much for people to think about. So if you're focusing on 6 big rocks, you can stay present to those 6 big rocks. And as Michael talked about before, we must celebrate the milestones. Every time we have a win, we need to celebrate it, because people forget the good and they hold on to the bad. Next is self-actualization. We've talked about this a lot. People want meaning and purpose in their work. Now, hey, I am a baby boomer. I'm 55. Oh, well, hold on. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I just turned 55. And 3 years into my recruiting job, I said, I'm bored. I didn't have words to say, I want more fulfillment. I want to feel like I'm making a bigger difference. Finding people jobs is a noble trade, but I wanted to help them after they got the job. I wanted to help the company. I didn't have words for that. Now I do, because I've spent 20 years looking for those words. But it isn't just the millennials who want meaning and purpose. People want to connect their internal purpose to the wagon of the company, to the purpose of the company. They want to feel impassioned that they're making a difference, and they want empowerment. Earlier, Michael talked about the micromanagement. We can't just say to people, you're empowered, go do it. We have to teach them. We have to teach them how to be. We have to teach them what the job is. And we also need to let go of that hold that we have on exactly how the job has to get done. Same company last week, VP of sales says, if I empowered I don't want empowerment, because if I empowered my salespeople, they'd give our business away. And I couldn't coach him in the moment because we were doing something else. But that thinking that he has about empowerment is habitual and repetitive with many managers, because there's a missing link, and that missing link between empowerment and letting go is training. We can't just say dance. We have to teach people to dance.
But it's so incredible when people have passion, Maji. I mean, you can see it and you can feel it. And companies that have passion and have engaged employees, they move so much faster, and it's so much more fun to work there. It's easier to recruit as well.
Yeah, so whatever role you're in, whether it's HR or learning and development or organizational development, I would say those are the 3 departments or kind of roles we work most with, besides working with the executive team. If the executive team is not engaged, and the HR or learning or culture it won't work. You must have an integrated approach. But there's bottom line improvements that happen when you take on improving engagement. And that is, it's easier to recruit, like Michael said, people stay longer. But for the executive team, you have higher level of productivity, higher level of effectiveness, higher level of efficiency, and higher level of profit. And if you're in this group, the HR, the people group, the people development group, you must learn to speak in terms of bottom line to get this group to connect with you. Because they're, like one of the things the CEO last week said, I just had a board call. The board didn't ask me how engaged my employees were. The board didn't ask me about our culture. The board asked me about profitability. The board asked me about operational effectiveness. So those of us that are in the people business, we need to speak in terms of the business impacts of anything and everything we want to do. We must connect the dots. Anything for you there, Michael?
Well, I think it's important to remember, Maji, that the bottom line is composed of 2 things, one of which is income and the other is expense. And when people are engaged, they're less likely to leave the company. You've got less training costs, less hiring costs, and again, you get much higher productivity. So just remember the 2 sides to the bottom line.
Great. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So we're going to skim high level these areas, but there's 5 families, if you categorize, of engagement or retention. And these are environmental, how it feels around there. What is the environment like? Not just the desk and the pictures on the wall, but how it feels. and then there's relationship, and then there's the support mechanisms, and then there's the growth, and then there's compensation. We have to look in all 5 categories to see what is it that we want to implement in these families that will make a difference for people. And then there's the elements of engagement. So Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about the elements, and then we'll move forward.
Well, obviously, if we have these elements, it increases the engagement of your employees. A flexible workplace. Do you have, work from home options? Do you have childcare at work? We talked about meaningful rewards. And again, ask your employees what's meaningful to them. Don't make assumptions. And social responsibility. Most of our companies that we work with are very engaged social in terms of the responsibility, social responsibility, nonprofits. They don't tell their employees what they're doing and celebrate it and get them involved. That's so important when it comes to engagement.
Yeah, so there's a gentleman by the name of Satya Nadella, and he's the CEO of Microsoft. If you want to look at a CEO who came in and completely eradicated a bad culture and used social responsibility as one way to do that, he's an excellent role model. And everything on here we've been talking about, the integration of work and life, caring about people as people, and what's going on outside of work. Because if you care about them and they know it, they'll care about you. So let's talk about some of the new trends, the top 3 areas that most companies need to work on and are working on, according to Forbes Workplace Trends, is cultural transformation. How do we make this a place people want to be? Learning and development and employee engagement. So what Michael and I have been saying all along is understand your people. Understand what it is to be a social enterprise. Have the C-suite be on the same page. The days of the C-suite being on 10 different camps are over. We need a symphonic, aligned C-suite, and we need that C-suite to understand how we can optimize people. It is not just an HR focus any longer. We need to look at all of the elements of engagement and implement them. So anything for you, Michael, here?
Well, I think we should explain what symphonic C-suite means, Maji. It means that senior leaders aren't working just in a silo in today's complex environment. The goal is to act as a symphony of experts playing in harmony, not a cacophony of experts who sound great alone, but not together. So we just need to share and to work together, share information, share knowledge, and care about each other.
Yeah, I think as I'm listening to us, we're saying the same thing. It's like the golden rule. The golden rule rules. So some of the things that you'll have to look at or have on your radar is how do we integrate mission and vision through the entire culture? How do we relook at performance management? How do we relieve people who are overwhelmed? Michael's talked a lot about the learning and how do we look at talent acquisition so that we're bringing the right people in the first place? And how do we optimize and leverage our people so we can utilize them for their greatest good? And what kind of technology do we need for that? What kind of analytics do we need for that? And then really looking at how do we prevent HR from being the tactical risk mitigators, and how do we have HR elevate to being the people optimizers that they truly want to be? So the reality is changing. There's an old reality, a new reality, and whoops, that's our time. We're almost out of time. We have 6 minutes left. So Michael, you want to talk about the old reality and then we'll wrap up, and the new reality?
Yeah, I think we all know the old reality. In the old days, we all needed the company. We were going to work there for 40 years, get a gold watch. Today, Not so much. Companies need people, they need to retain people, and they need to keep them engaged. In the old reality, we were machines, capital, geography. That was our competitive advantage. Today, your culture is your competitive advantage. And creating a culture of engaged, focused people is your unique advantage. In the old days, better talent made some difference, not today. Today, better talent makes all the difference. So that's why it's so important to be able to hire the right people and keep them engaged.
So for those of you,
so go ahead, Maji.
Those of you that are on the webinar, one of the things that Keen Alignments always starts with, and I encourage you to start with this in your own organization, is to start collecting data about what's going on in your culture, what's going on with your leaders. So one of the pieces of data that we use is we administer a leadership assessment. It allows you to see how you view people in the workplace, how you view the work that there is to do, and how you view the system overall. Obviously, not just you, but your entire leadership team, or your entire OD team, or your entire HR team, or your entire LD team. But it also has to look at how do you feel about yourself and the work that you have to do, and how confident or positive are you in the long-term viability of what you're doing with your company. Also, what are your core values, and what is your work style, and how you get work done. And then this assessment that we're going to give you for free also looks at where you rank in the top 7 leadership categories, from envisioning an outcome to communicating your vision to understanding your supporters. So if you text the number 44222 and you type in maximize 123, you have an opportunity to take this free assessment for yourself. I ask you not to share this with others because we actually charge people for this, but because you're with us on this webinar, we're going to give it to you. It gives you an opportunity for some self-awareness, which truly, if you want to shift culture, it begins with you, and really looking at how do you operate and perceive culture. So Michael, anything that you want to say upon concluding our time together?
Well, I think we also should mention that we've got a free 21-day program that they can enroll in if they just email you. Give us the email, Maji.
So it's Magi, M-A-G-I, at Keen Alignment, KEENALIGNMENT.com. And you just put in the body free 21-day program. So we are going to be sending, and this is HRCI and SHRM accredited. So every day, if you sign up for this, you are going to get a 1 to 3 minute video about how to change your mind, about your thinking about culture, and how to inspire other people. Also, we have a workshop that we are leading, a retreat on October 16th through 18th. It's transforming culture from the inside out. So beginning with you, and this also offers 16 SHRM credits or 15.5 HRCI credits. It is only up for 35 people. So if you're interested, you can also send us an email about that. I also encourage you to visit our website, sign up for our newsletter. We are all about transforming the world of work, and we give away content because we know that not everybody's going to hire us. Not everybody's going to have a budget for this, but we, Michael and I and the rest of the Keen team, are completely committed to giving you the knowledge you need to get to the next level. So thank you for your participation. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Dr. Michael Soon Lee, for your expertise.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing your book. Thank you, and goodbye, everybody.